Hey everybody, and welcome to this deep dive. You ready to unlock some seriously cool English expressions?
I'm ready.
All right. Today we've got 4 common phrases we're going to take apart. We'll discover not just what they mean, but where they came from. It's going to be fun. Think outside the box, bewildering, hit the sack, and whip off. I think you'll be surprised how much easier it is to remember these phrases once you know their origin stories.
Like finding out a word's secret history. This
Yes.
makes it stick in your mind better.
Exactly. Okay, so let's kick things off with think outside the box. This one pops up everywhere, right? Especially in the business world.
Yeah, for sure.
But get this, it actually comes from this simple 9-dot puzzle. The one where you have to connect all 9 dots with just 4 straight lines.
Oh, yeah. I remember that puzzle. You can't do it if you stay inside the box. You got to draw lines that extend outside that imaginary box.
Right. Isn't that fascinating? And that's precisely where the phrase comes from.
It's amazing how that puzzle became like this metaphor for creative problem solving.
Yeah.
Like you're stuck with a problem that seems impossible, and the only way to solve it is to break free from those limits you've put on yourself.
It's so true. And it makes you think about how often we probably limit ourselves without even realizing it. Like maybe in our work or our relationships. Even in our daily routines, we get stuck in those mental boxes.
Exactly. And that's where the power of thinking outside the box really shines through. It's not just about coming up with crazy ideas. It's about questioning everything, challenging the status quo, and then looking for answers in unexpected places.
Yeah, it's like building up your mental muscles
Right.
to help you break free.
Yeah, exactly like that. Every time you face a problem,
Yeah.
I think you should challenge yourself to visualize your ideas, actually stepping outside of a box. Might sound silly, but just that image can help you think more freely, I think.
I like that. It's a great tip. And thinking outside the box has some cool synonyms too, like innovative thinking and blue sky thinking.
Yeah, and each of those synonyms has a slightly different shade of meaning. Innovative thinking is more about putting new ideas into action, while blue sky thinking is more about big ideas without any limitations.
So many cool nuances. Okay, let's switch gears now and talk about bewildering. It's that feeling of being totally confused, like you've wandered into a place where the rules no longer make sense.
It's like trying to solve a riddle, but some of the pieces are missing.
Exactly. And here's a cool fact. The word itself comes from the Middle English bewilder, which means to thoroughly lead astray.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
I know, right? Think about what it's like to get lost in a really dense forest, that feeling of being disoriented, not knowing where to turn. That's bewildering.
Oh, yeah. I can totally see that.
It's like your senses are playing tricks on you. You can't trust what you see or hear. Has that ever happened to you?
Oh, yeah. It can be a bit unsettling, but you know what? I think bewilderment can actually push us to grow.
Oh, how so?
Well, when we come across something that challenges our understanding of the world, it forces us to rethink our assumptions and look for new perspectives, and ultimately learn more.
It's true. Sometimes confusion can actually be a good thing. It pushes us to engage more with the world around us.
Exactly. It's like a wake-up call for our brains.
Now, I bet there are tons of examples of bewilderment in literature, art, even music.
For sure. You see it in paintings that don't make logical sense or in films with endings that leave you wondering, wait, what just happened? They create this sense of bewilderment and make us face the unknown and really grapple with complex emotions.
And speaking of grappling with complex things, sometimes after a long day of dealing with the bewildering stuff of life, all you want to do is hit the sack.
Yes, that's a classic phrase. And believe it or not, it comes from the very real part of life in the early 20th century.
Oh, really? What is it?
Well, back then, mattresses were usually filled with straw, and those straw-filled bags were literally called sacks.
Oh, wow. So when you were ready for bed, you would literally hit the sack?
Exactly. It's fascinating how everyday objects become part of our language. And it makes me think, how many of the phrases we use now will still be around in 100 years?
Great question. I have no idea, but I bet some of them will completely disappear.
Yeah, language is always changing, right? It reflects how our world is changing. I bet some slang words we use today will sound super old-fashioned to people in the future.
I bet. It's like hearing your parents use old slang. It's kind of funny and embarrassing all at the same time.
Totally. It's a reminder that even words have a best before date.
So true. All right, we've covered think outside the box and bewildering, and now hit the sack. Before we jump into rip-off, any thoughts on what we've talked about so far?
Well, I'm just amazed by how these simple phrases have such deep histories and meanings. They're more than just words. They're like little time capsules from the past.
You know what else blows my mind? It's how even though those straw-filled sacks are gone, The image of hitting the sack still works. It perfectly captures that feeling of being tired and finally being able to relax and go to sleep.
Yeah, it does. I think that's what makes idioms so powerful. They connect to shared experiences, and they create these vivid pictures in our minds that last through time.
And if you ever want to mix things up, you can always use phrases like turn in or hit the hay. They all basically mean the same thing, time to get some sleep.
Exactly.
Okay, and now for the one we've all dreaded at some point, rip off.
Yeah, this was not fun.
It's that terrible feeling of getting totally ripped off or ending up with something way worse than you expected. Like when you buy concert tickets online thinking you got a great deal and then find out they're selling them at the venue for half the price.
Ouch. Yeah, it's the
It
worst.
feels like someone just reached into your wallet and literally ripped you off.
Exactly. It's like a punch to the gut.
And rip-off goes deeper than just paying too much. It's like you've
Yeah.
been cheated, taken advantage of, almost violated in a way.
Right. It leaves you feeling angry and powerless.
I think we've all been there at some point. Have you ever experienced a major rip-off that just left you fuming?
Yeah, unfortunately I have. It's not a fun feeling.
Not at all.
Yeah.
But hey, at least we can learn from those experiences and become smarter about our choices in the future.
Right. Absolutely. Being aware of how scammers operate and what unethical businesses do can help us avoid getting ripped off.
So true. Now, rip-off also has some strong synonyms like swindle, scam, and fraud.
Oh, yeah. They all carry that sense of being tricked or cheated.
Exactly.
The-
Okay, so we've covered 4 fantastic phrases today. Think outside the box, bewildering, hit the sack, and rip off. We've dug into their meanings, their origins, and even shared some memory tricks to help you remember them. What are your thoughts so far?
You know what I find most fascinating? Is how these phrases might seem simple on the surface, but they have such rich histories and complex meanings. It reminds me that language is always changing and evolving. It reflects our world and how we think and communicate.
It really is. Like, language is a living, breathing thing.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
constantly growing and adapting.
I love that. Okay, we'll be right back after a short break to explore even more about the ever-changing world of language.
Yeah, it really is like language has a life of its own. It's constantly changing and adapting.
Exactly. And that makes me wonder, are there like sayings or idioms that people just don't use anymore? Like they've gone out of style.
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm sure there are tons.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think?
I think so too. Language is always evolving, right? So some words and phrases stick around and others just fade away. They get replaced with newer expressions.
Makes sense. Can you think of an example?
Let's see. Oh, what about the phrase going steady? It was like super popular back in the mid 20th century, to describe a serious relationship.
Going steady. Yeah, I haven't heard that in ages. Why do you think people stopped using it?
Well, I think our ideas about relationships have changed, and language reflects that, right? Nowadays, we might use words like exclusive or in a relationship to mean the same thing, but those old expressions just sound kind of dated now.
Yeah, they do. It's like hearing your parents use slang from their younger days. It's a bit cringy. Totally. It just goes to show that even language has an expiration date.
So how do we keep up with all the changes? How do we make sure our language stays fresh and relevant?
I think the key is to be curious. Pay attention to how people around you are using language. Especially younger generations, they often come up with new slang and expressions.
That's a good point. It's like we should be lifelong learners of language.
Exactly. And it's not just about slang either. Keep an eye out for new words that enter the dictionary and how the meanings of existing words change, And think about how technology and culture affect how we communicate.
It sounds like becoming fluent in a language is a never-ending journey. It's not something you can ever truly master.
That's a great way to put it. Language is constantly shifting and changing. That's what makes it so fascinating.
All right, so to recap, we've explored 4 amazing English expressions: think outside the box, bewildering, hit the sack, and rip off. We've uncovered their meanings, their origins, and even some handy memory tricks.
And hopefully this deep dive has not only added to your vocabulary, but also made you appreciate the richness and complexity of language.
Because words are more than just tools. They're like little containers of history, culture, and human experience.
Exactly. And understanding those deeper layers of meaning can help you become a better communicator, a more critical thinker, and just a more engaged person in this amazing world of language.
And that brings us to the end of part 2. We'll be right back to wrap things up with some final thoughts and takeaways. Stay tuned.
Yeah, it's like we're all adding to this huge tapestry of language, right?
Right.
With new words and new ways of saying things, and it keeps changing as the world changes.
Yeah, exactly. And that makes me think about the future of language, like what everyday things that we use now will turn into the idioms of tomorrow.
Ooh, that's a cool thought. What if in like a few decades, binge watching or doom scrolling